This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
All right, the other thing, Kalen Ballage released by the Miami Dolphins. Talk a little sports. There isn't too many sports to talk about today. The Dolphins aren't practicing. I don't know if they'll practice tomorrow. I don't know if it's going to be affected, all that kind of stuff. But Kalen Ballage is released. Ian Rappaport reported it yesterday. No surprise, really. Listen, this is a process right now that they're going through. I read Armando Salguero's article, and he made a lot of decent points along the way, but I think it was more of a drama type filled article than anything else, because you got to judge the man from when he took over last year. Okay? There's too many politics and too much crap that's involved. If Kalen Ballage doesn't fit what this new coach is doing, what are you going to do? And like when he brought up Raekwon McMillan was drafted 3 years ago, and it was for a different coach, a different defensive scheme, a different responsibility. And we talked about this, what was it, a week ago? I told you about Raekwon McMillan, and we were talking about it. And I told you that he's a two-down linebacker. Now, there's nothing wrong with the two-down linebacker if that's how you're going to use him. And maybe that's how they plan to use him 3 years ago with another coach and another defensive coordinator. But this defensive coordinator demands players to be multiple. Last year, Raekwon McMillan did not play bad. He actually was serviceable, man. He did a nice job. They made him a pass rusher. He got a couple sacks. They found a way to use him, but he's not perfect. And I talked about this a week ago that he doesn't really fit what they do. I told you this. So here's the thing. Do you want a team that screws around and leaves Jamar Fletcher on the team year after year after year after year when you know he can't play and he doesn't belong there? Do you want the team that keeps lining up Jerry Wilson? Do you want the team that keeps bringing back Ryan Tannehill, even though Ryan Tannehill could never get you over the hump, was never, ever a difference maker, was no more than a facilitator on his best day? Because that's the team you've had here for the last 20 years. No matter what coach, no matter what front office executive, there were people that were keeping people around that weren't fitting what they do because they were trying to justify and play the politics. These guys don't justify it. They don't play the politics. Kalen Ballage, you're not good enough, you're gone. That's just the way it is. They're not wasting any time. Minkah Fitzpatrick, you want to create a big stink. You don't want to be here? Get the hell out. We'll trade you away. They're not going to waste time. And I'm glad for that. Josh Rosen, we gave you a shot. You had a whole year. You didn't convince us? We're drafting Tua. Because I guarantee you that if Josh Rosen finds a way to kick some ass last year and play well, they don't draft Tua. They get themselves a lockdown corner or a defensive end, another offensive lineman, whatever. They could have gotten themselves a hell of a position player at 5. But if they took Tua, it's because they're turning the page from Rosen. And they're going to give Rosen another opportunity to come back and try to play well and try to become a backup and try to prove himself, and maybe they can trade him. But starting, no, man, they made their decision. They're moving on to Tua. That's just the way it is here. And I love the way they're doing things. You have to be decisive. You have to make decisions that sometimes are uncomfortable. Curtis Weaver, I don't know what happened. But obviously, in the certain amount of months since they drafted him, he didn't do enough to impress them. There must have been several examples that the position coach, the defensive coordinator, and the head coach, and the front office guy, they all must have been talking about him for one reason or another. I told you this, I think last week. I mentioned it a few months ago. This coaching staff cannot screw around. This front office cannot screw around. It's a black front office. They're not going to be given the same chances that a white front office is given. You know that, and I know that. Okay? So Chris Greer knows that he has to kick ass. Do you think he's going to let players go that he thinks he could help them? If he thinks he made a mistake, or if he thinks a player doesn't belong on the roster, or if the coach doesn't like this player, then they're going to move on. And you got to trust their decision-making. You saw what Ballage is. They moved on. You saw Rosen last year. As much as I like Rosen, he just didn't do enough. They got Tua. I don't blame them. But I'd rather have my chances and have Rosen and Tua competing and playing, because Rosen might wake up and Tua might get it done. At least I've got 2 shots now at it. Whereas you never had a shot because you never brought in anybody, and you kept bringing 17 back every year, even though he couldn't do it. So if Ballage is not doing it, or if Jerome, Curtis Weaver is not impressing you, then you move on. So we're going to complain about somebody making a change they feel to make, or we're going to complain because it's a draft pick. And the other thing is, you can't expect to hit on all the picks. And, one of the things I saw in the article when he was talking about, well, only 1 of 4 first-round picks from the last 4 years are still here. That's not a fair statement, dude. Because Laramie Tunsil would still be here if nobody offered 7,000 picks for him. And Minkah, if he wanted to be here, he would still be here. But they had to trade him because he wanted out. So that's why only 1 of 4 is left. If not, it would be 3 of 4. And you can't mention that by saying, well, they got several draft picks for these players. Let's see what happens with all these draft picks. Because they may end up with a better team because they had several picks. So if they end up with 3 or 4 good players out of the 2 players, aren't they a better team? So it was kind of, I understood what Armando was writing, but I almost felt like it was something that it's kind of an easy write, and there's more depth to it, and there's more story to all of this. Especially when he says, oh, well, there's only 1 of 4 first-round picks. Well, but there's context to that. And you got to talk about the context, and it's not necessarily their fault. They made changes, and Minkah didn't buy into it, so you got to trade him. Now you got to find another player with that first-round pick and the fourth-round pick that makes up for Minkah. And you got to now find, a couple players so you can more than make up for Laramie Tunsil. So there you go.
I'm a little disappointed. You called him Minkah, not Minkah bitch.
Oh, Minkah bitch, yes.